So
what's this about, John? What's the movie?
What is it about?
The premise is
Premise is pretty easy.
It's pretty easy.
Yeah.
Will Ferrell is a widowed father who has a daughter who's getting married. Reese Witherspoon is a sister of a bride who is about to get married, and they book the same venue for the same weekend on accident.
Because the old lady dies.
Because the old lady dies in the middle of the phone call. And so
pretty
both
funny.
weddings
Right
show
after
up.
the phone call,
Both
John.
weddings show up to this very exclusive island.
And they make sure to let
community.
you know, we can only have one wedding on the island.
Yes.
It's too tiny.
Yeah, they and
Multiple times they let you know.
multiple times. And so
First time, thank you.
Yep.
well, it
Chekhov's
turns
Island.
out that Reese Witherspoon finds out that Will Ferrell is widowed and she feels bad. So they decide to coexist and try to share the space.
Yeah.
And the hijinks ensue.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty much all you need to know.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Ken, it's weird. I laughed at this movie. I thought that there were actually some fairly funny moments.
Did you?
I thought that there were some funny moments, but ultimately, the further we get away from it, I like it less for two reasons. Just some of the weird crap that happened, like the bride just starting to kiss everybody. That was strange. An alligator ending up in bed with Will Ferrell, also strange. But the biggest thing, it's a rom-com, and there is no chemistry between the two characters the whole movie, and yet they end up together. It made zero sense.
The most chemistry I felt between both of them is when he was all covered in water and stuff, and he was dancing with her. They were all really close.
Yeah.
That's the most chemistry I ever felt.
Like the whole movie, I'm thinking, this is going to zag, and they're actually not going to get together. I by the end of the movie, I thought, okay, maybe they're just not going to get together.
I'll be honest with you. I didn't think until like the last 10 minutes that, oh crap, they're going to get together. I just thought it was going to end somehow. And then when they did, it was like, oh, so this is what we've been building to.
He smiles
this
weird
whole
every time he looks at her.
The one time that I thought they had chemistry together was in the closing credits when they did the song.
Yeah.
They did this. They did the Islands in the Stream as part of the closing credits. That wasn't technically part of the movie.
Yeah, the movie's over.
And that's when they had the best chemistry.
Speaking of the ending credits, I think the ending credits is a perfect description of the entire movie, where, you know how the ending credits seemed really disjointed? They would go from singing to like these random outtakes to singing again.
Mm-hmm.
This movie felt very disjointed to me. Things were just kind of happening. Yeah. And honestly, I think a more compelling movie would have been if Will Ferrell's section just wasn't in it, and it just focused on Reese Witherspoon and her relationship with her family and her relationship with herself.
Yeah.
I think that would have been infinitely more compelling.
And then maybe have Will Ferrell be part of her family.
Well, so I was,
you know what I'm saying? Just redo the movie. I get where you're going with this, but if you need to have Will Ferrell in the movie, just don't. You know, you can have him be one of the other characters.
Even make him like a side character. Even make him like they still have the two wedding, but the only thing you focus on is Reese Witherspoon and her family. And sometimes things just happen, and it's just Will Ferrell.
Yeah.
Kent.
I can't believe you didn't know where this was going from the first second this movie started. Or as soon as you knew the setup and they were both single.
I guess, yeah.
From the first jump. Second, what this really is a 90s rom-com that, or early 2000s, whatever you want. I guess early 2000s for these two would be more.
Yeah.
That didn't fire, okay? It comes from Nick Stoller, who did some really good movies at that time. He did Forgetting Sarah Marshall. He did Get Him to the Greek. He did Neighbors. Those were all his movies. They were good movies, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're 20 years too old, right?
Yeah.
The rom-com has basically died a painful death at the box office, which is why I think this thing went directly, why Amazon bought MGM Studios. Okay.
Yes.
So I assume this was in production at MGM when Amazon bought the thing. That's my guess. So then Amazon says, we could put this in the studios. It won't make, or in the theaters, it won't make a ton of money there. Let's just dump it instantly on Prime and see if we can get some people there to watch it, because the target audience for it, because the rom-com audience doesn't exist under the age of probably 30 or maybe 35. So the target audience for this was the back end of the millennials and older, right? The people that were Will Ferrell fans, the Reese Witherspoon fans 20 years ago. And so that's what happens with this movie. I'm like Josh. There were a few things I thought were really funny, like even when she's spouting all the profanity, right? I thought that was actually pretty amusing, right? Some of it. But the farther away you get from it, the more you just kind of go, bleh. I mean, that just nothing. It was a very, to me, sign of why rom-coms are gone, right? There was nothing particularly new there. And then finally on the two characters, making a romance of an actor with characters who Will Ferrell is 58, I believe, 57 or 58, and I think she just turned 50. That's a little old to be making that kind of a romantic movie rom-com style, right? It just doesn't quite fire for me. So, there you go.
Yeah, she's 48 and Will Ferrell is 57.
So I actually didn't hate that aspect that much.
Like getting together?
I didn't really hate that because it is a unique thing. Like Kent said, not a lot of rom-coms do feature older people getting together. So I didn't hate that aspect of it. I hated most everything else, but I think the concept itself was fine.
It just felt like it went from 0 to 100. I mean, the very end hits, and and then all of a sudden, I realize I'm attracted to you. It just seemed like if that needed to be played out, there needed to be more, I guess, sexual tension.
Lay the breadcrumbs.
Yeah,
earlier
in the movie.
2 days.
Yeah. Like I thought that when Will Ferrell's out and he's having a glass of wine and he's talking to his wife who's passed away.
Yeah.
I thought that was kind of like an emotional, it could have been a setup for the,
yes.
And it just kind of happens and then it just is done. You know, it wasn't, they didn't lay the breadcrumbs down.
And I would also, I neglected to mention this, the woman who plays Will Ferrell's daughter, whose name I am not even going to make an attempt to say, is usually really funny. And they just gave her nothing.
Yeah, I hadn't seen her.
Writing will do that.
I hadn't seen her in anything before, Ken. I'm looking at the list of movies and TV shows. I knew who the other bride is because she's been in a couple of things that I have seen before, including a movie that came out during COVID a few years ago called Palm Springs, and she was actually a friend of a bride in that movie. And I thought it has people in this that I recognize. I thought the plots with the Reese Witherspoon family, and
that was the best stuff.
I think that's what I was saying. I think that would have been a way more compelling movie.
I think some of that was pretty relatable too, you know, where it's like you move away and maybe you don't feel like you fit anymore. I thought the bit with the guy always calling his wife the wife, and then the names of the kids, like I thought that stuff is funny because I am someone who is horrible at remembering the names. As the family that I have get larger and larger, I'm like, what's the kid's name again?
Will Ferrell's mnemonic device he would use to try to remember names.
Awesome.
That was hilarious.
Yeah. So it's very disjointed.
I thought that the character, the way the characters were set up, because some of them felt grounded in reality, and then others felt way too ridiculous. My biggest gripe with the characters are all of Will Ferrell's daughters, like friends.
Yeah, they sucked.
It felt like the writer was somebody who's middle-aged, and he wrote what he thinks that early 20s act like. It was like a caricature of early 20s, and that bugged me. That just bugged me.
Well, they were just really annoying, and I could have done without any of them.
Yeah. Well, that part at the end, how they're like blocking him, I didn't realize like that was an apartment. I'm like, damn, this is a nice place. How can they afford this place?
Good point.
Nick, you're on to something there, and that's part of what I was saying. It feels like it's 20 years old. Because as I'm sure it's the same writers that worked with him on those other movies, and they're just that felt old. The one character I did like a lot was her mom.
She was
yes,
good.
that was
really
good.
I loved that conversation that they had eating the
towards
cake.
the end.
That was such a heartfelt moment.
Mhm.
It was so good.
Yeah.
The movie was solo written according to Wiki. The Stoller is the one who wrote it.
Okay, well, look at when he made his good movies in 2002, 3, 4.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, good point. I think, and I know they haven't done anything together for a while, but when Will Ferrell doesn't have Adam McKay, it doesn't work.
Yeah.
I
It feels forced. It feels forced. I mean, all of Will Ferrell's good stuff has been with Adam McKay being part of the writing team.
But I will say this too, Kent, isn't there something to be said for how many actors who've done comedies over the years have been able to have a career that lasts this many? Sadly, this is kind of what happens.
Oh, absolutely. I'm not
it's been 10 years since Will Ferrell had a hit movie.
Yeah. And it's been 20 years since Anchorman.
How often?
20 years since Anchorman and 10 years since Anchorman 2 or whatever is 10 years ago. And that's it. He's done nothing since then.
I know the answer is very rarely, but who was the last actor who had just a great run the whole way through?
Like a comedic actor or an actor? Like a serious actor?
Both, I guess, because even serious actors, you can tell, toward the end.
I mean, Leonardo DiCaprio's still having a hell of a run.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I don't think of him as a comedic actor.
No, Nick said actor. He just
actor.
Said
I was thinking comedic actor. I suppose someone like Bill Murray, but with Bill Murray, he expanded his horizons.
Yeah.
He did some.
He doesn't play the same goofy guy over and over and over.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Where because Ferrell's characters are very similar, and part of the problem that I kind of had with this guy is he wasn't goofy enough, and he was too kind of a jerk.
Yeah,
he was. When Ferrell's characters have been jerks in other movies, it's because they're too goofy to figure out they're being a jerk. Right?
Yeah, I think Kent now. I think Ferrell is one of those characters that works a whole lot better when he is in very small doses, because then he can dial up being a jerk, but he's kind of in and out of the movie, and it's not that big of a deal. But I think carrying a movie, he can't carry a movie anymore.
He was perfectly fine in Barbie. Well,
yeah. Mm-hmm. Exactly, because he's a goofball and he's a weirdo, but he's in the movie for 5-10 minutes, and then he's gone. Yeah. Sonny points out, he said the Peyton Manning part was random. It was pretty funny. I did laugh at Peyton Manning just showing up and then not talking.
That was
pretty funny.
I had no idea he was in it. So it's what is Peyton Manning doing in this? And then, of course, it's of course, he's in everything. Right?
That's true.
See, what really threw me off is when they're getting ready to do the second wedding, and then they're waiting for their cool pastor, and it was Nick Jonas. My exact words were, "Is that Nick Jonas?" It was.
I didn't know who that was.
One of the Jonas brothers, who Disney.
Yeah, that guy sucked.
Disney star. I like when he started singing Creed, but then that's another example of how the writing was kind of not good, because I feel like the only reason he was singing Creed is because Creed is kind of a meme right now. I think that's going to extremely date the movie even more than it feels.
Kent, you mentioned something earlier. Why have rom-coms died?
Multiple reasons. One is that the shift in the theatrical in favor of all the Marvel movies, the Star Wars, that fill the theaters, horror movies, whatever. That audience hasn't been kept up, I guess you could say, over the years, because that's been such a strong emphasis from the studios. Indie companies aren't going to be making a bunch of rom-coms, right? A24 is not putting out any rom-coms, right?
Feels like the only rom-coms anymore are basically on Lifetime or Hallmark.
Correcto. And that audience has gone to the home viewing for whatever reason. And the other part of the reason is start going through a list of people today that are the same sort of movie star that Will Ferrell or Reese Witherspoon or whoever was 20 years ago. It's a very, very small number that you could start to even think about making a rom-com around.
Yeah.
Right?
It seems like all the rom-coms are just like they're either shows on Netflix or movies on Netflix with no-name actors.
Yep. Yes, indeed.
Yeah.
And some of that is also because, this is my theory, I haven't read this, but rom-com has such a female appeal.
Yeah.
And men are driving the box office for pretty much everything. But, you know, horror is more of a male appeal. The Star Wars and those tend a little more. I'm not as much, but you start looking Oppenheimer, even the serious movies tend to not go to that female side of the ledger, so to speak.
Yeah, and I think Strigori says something too here, Kent. If I'm going to spend money to go to a theater, I want something on the screen to be worth it and a feeling I can't get at home. Seeing a movie that it's like, I have to see it on the big screen because I don't feel like going to see a rom-com is going to be worth spending $12. I want to see, it's like the Mission Impossible movie. When that comes out this summer, I'll probably want to go see it in theaters because it's a however many foot screen.
Which is unfortunate because there's still something about the community aspect.
Of comedy?
Or I'm just talking movies in general.
Oh, okay.
Or comedies. But I think back to, watching Rocky IV and the whole theater starts cheering when, Rocky cuts Drago, you get those types of, community type events.
Something about Mary.
Yeah. Incredible in the theater. But that is certainly something that doesn't have to play on the big screen.
And that's part of what I was talking about when I said the transition in theatrical, right? To more of those kind of movies. And part of it is they've kind of priced themselves out of the sort of mid-level movie. You take two people you're going to go to a rom-com. You're probably not going by yourself, right?
Yeah. Yep.
So you're talking $25 minimum. Most markets, and movies are cheap around here. Have you bothered to go to a movie in New York? When you've been in New York?
No, but I priced them, and yeah, it's high.
You're going to spend $25 a head in New York.
Yeah.
So are you going to drop $50 to get in the door, another $20 for concessions, and then however much it costs you to get there, or you have to have babysitters or whatever, you're dropping $100, $120. And even around here, you can easily spend $50.
Yeah, that's true.
Is it worth $50 to see a rom-com? Well, probably not.
Yeah.
Is it worth $50 to see the Mission Impossible movie? Probably yes, because of the experience that they're delivering. That's kind of sad, because I think that most films should be seen in the theater where they're intended to be seen. And here's one of the reasons why. It's not just the scale, the sound, and all of that. It's also that you're in a room in the dark with a bunch of strangers and you pay attention to the movie. You're not stopping it to go get something to drink or to go to the bathroom or whatever, or watching
or read a book like Josh
later or whatever. You watch it as it was intended to be watched. And that's going away for a lot of films.
Man, can't you mention it? I was like, I'm going to look up an AMC theater in Manhattan. And sure enough, it is $26 after fees to go see a movie. And then you add in
one person?
For one person.
Here?
No, in Manhattan.
In Manhattan. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So it's like so that's two movies or two people you're talking about 50. And that's before you do anything else. You're probably eating either at the theater or at a restaurant, maybe not, but I mean, very quickly you're talking about $100+. And then if you have a babysitter, if you have a kid, I mean, game over. It's a date night for $200.
More than that.
That's crazy.
If you're going to drop $200 on a date night, why go to a movie?
Yeah.
Which is why more people probably end up at sporting events.
Yeah, because you can talk.
Exactly.
Yeah.
No, I think that's absolutely true. If you look at and we talk about box office. Box office went down last year. Not by a lot, but it went down. Okay.
Even though the price of the movies is always going up.
Correct.
Yeah.
Which tells you fewer people are going to the movies in the theaters for multiple reasons, including if you're a rom-com fan, they're not one to go to.
Yeah, that's true.
Well, there it is. You're cordially invited. We didn't really give it a seal.
You're not cordially invited to this. We would warn you.
Yeah.
The other thing, the title for this movie kind of sucks.
It's not that bad.
I think the
Why couldn't they call it Two Weddings?
And a funeral.
I was thinking the same thing.
That one was taken and
double booked.
And I'll admit, I may have been spoiled. I wasn't spoiled in terms of the plot, but the wife watched it a couple of days before I did, and
did she say bad?
She was not.
Yeah.
And so I may have not gone into it with the best attitude.
It didn't look. Well, I didn't go into it with the best attitude either. So maybe we all went into it with bad attitudes.
Perhaps
it did make me laugh a few times.
But I mean, let's face it. This is Will Ferrell.
Yeah.
Best Will Ferrell movie. Go.
Anchorman.
Step Brothers.
Kent.
I might go with, what am I going to go with? The best Will Ferrell movie. I think it's got to be one with John C. Reilly.
Step Brothers.
Talladega Nights is
Talladega Nights, maybe.
Wow, so we're all over the place, John.
I love Talladega Nights.
I love Talladega Nights, but man, Anchorman, again, another one of those movies saw in the theater, great community experience, and laughed a lot.
See, in Step Brothers, my brother and I used to quote that to each other all the time.
Saw Step Brothers in the theater.
See, it's funny. I didn't like Step Brothers that much the first time I saw it, and then I watched it again and
love
again
that movie
and again
so much.
and again and
The
again.
one that gets better with each viewing is Semi-Pro. I love Semi-Pro.
I would agree with that.
I haven't seen that.
And Blades of Glory.
And Blades of Glory.
After you've seen it. I mean, because that one, when I saw it, I remember seeing it at the screening going, huh? Was more my reaction. And then when I watched it on TV, it's like, that's really fun.